Hello, everyone, and welcome to Quantum Human Revelations. How are you all doing today? Have you enjoyed in the UK the heat wave we've had for the last few days? So while I get everything set up here, the question I asked 2 weeks ago was, is our modern day spirituality actually helping us in the needs of the modern human? So if you just joined me for tonight, maybe you might want to go back to 2 episodes ago so you can start thinking about this question, because that's what I want to ask you all about tonight, to see if anybody's had any updates since last week. So if anybody's on that was with me last week, then let me know so I can see how we've got on that question. Also, did everybody see that I posted the Pisces reel of the lessons, the soul lessons and personality lessons of Pisces? And did you guys have any questions on that? Cool. Well, I can see that I'm definitely live, and I can see, I think, so that's all changed again. So let's see if I can see some comments coming through. So hello, welcome. I'm Trudy. I'm Whitstarsoulguidance. And hello to everyone on Zoom, and a hello to everyone on YouTube. So a couple of weeks ago, I asked the question, is our modern day spirituality actually meeting our modern day needs? And I wanted to continue that conversation a bit today. So I also asked if you guys have seen the reel that I loaded with the lessons of Pisces, because Pisces is where we start to come back out of the ether, our soul, and back into being born as a human for the first time, which is when our personality takes over. So I thought that's really good explanation then of some of the soul kind of battles that we're about to embrace as we go through the astrological year, learning the soul's journey from ether to human and then back up to ether again, having learned new lessons. Great. So somebody on, Jenny just said on Zoom that she's seen the reel. Marta's asking what was the question again. Have you guys had any insights regarding whether the way that we approach spirituality now is actually helping humanity? So just to give you, excellent. So if anybody's commenting on YouTube, I'm not actually seeing the comments. I'm not sure where that's just gone. So I'm just looking to see if I can make sure the comments are on. So if somebody's actually typed in a message on YouTube, I'm not seeing it at the moment. There's only a button that tells me, but today there is no button. Okay, well, I'll watch on that for a moment, and if I get stuck, then I'll, if I don't see any messages in a short while, I'll try and change my settings on YouTube. So here we are now, a week into September, and if you caught up with last week's September reading, which is a combination of the Pisces full moon lessons and also the energies that I'm reading in regard to our soul vision this month. So Quantum Human Revelations are for people who are not necessarily destined to be healers, but are those that are really wanting to embody the spiritual aspects into our everyday experience. They will become masters of energy, masters of divination and accessing their soul wisdom, but also masters in taking action and turning the insights that they get into physical projects so they can make a contribution to the planet. So that's the group that we are aiming this conversation at. And there is a slight difference between being a healer and being a quantum human. So when I was researching for names that I could use that would represent this group of people, there isn't really a name for them at the moment, which is why I use the quantum human. I researched and I couldn't find anybody else using that term other than it was part of human design language. There is a lady, Karen, who is using human design also as a quantum human design. So I'm hoping this name kind of sticks as this new group of beings, because we've got plenty of healers, plenty of people who are seers, who can bring some of this information in. But it's a different thing to be able to contribute something more than just helping other people or coaching other people, which is why I wanted to separate the two groups so we could look at them separately and see what that brought to the surface for us. And that fits in nicely with our question about whether our spiritual practices right now are really meeting our needs. Now, the important thing is, when I say this, I'm not talking about whether spiritual concepts work. It's more about, are they getting through in the way they need to get through to help people in the modern day? If we think about it, in the old days, people who were on this enlightenment journey would go off and sit on a mountaintop and meet other people who could discuss these kind of topics, who would spend years in silence contemplating these topics so that they could embody them. Well, the modern human doesn't have time for this. We don't have time. And even if we do go on a retreat, we don't spend there other than maybe a week, and then we're back to work, back to our schedule. That feeling that we experience has completely been lost. And then it's back to how we were. So that's kind of where my question was coming from. It's that the modern day is moving so much quicker. Technology is all around us. Our expectations of what we are supposed to do in a day has changed. So how do we fit this growth and evolution and spiritual advancement and awakening into our everyday? Now, at the moment, I feel that we spend a lot of time maybe on Facebook or social media, sort of hunting down people who are talking on the subject where we can listen to them. Maybe we read a book. Some of us do go on retreats, like I said, but there are many different types of retreats with many different goals. So how do you know that you are achieving your spiritual goals? So last week, some of the people said that they felt the main reason why this wasn't being successful was because of spiritual bypassing, where people weren't doing the work and just wanted the results, which I think really fits the whole of society right now. We all want results without having to do any of the work. We want that fast fix, just like the world is fast. So that kind of makes sense. Let's see what people are saying. So Marta's saying, yeah, feels like many more people are understanding the surface level of spirituality. And Jenny saying that spirituality is acting more like a plaster than an actual cure, but still not seeing the results in the daily life. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm seeing as well. And obviously I get clients that come to me and I see what they've tried in the past and what's working for them now. So that's kind of what I was getting at. So if we are quantum humans, how do we fix this? Like, how do we visualize something that's different as a different solution? Like, how do we get people to understand, or at least be able to stand there and take the journey that they need to do, the tasks, changing their identity, making changes in their life, all these things that have to happen. You know, it's like one thing getting the information, and then you have to turn it into your own wisdom. So you go from data through all the stages that information takes before it finally becomes your wisdom, that becomes then actually becomes your vibration for you then to live in accordance with this new rule. That journey is quite a big gap. And we sometimes are happy there and we think we've got to the end of the road, but actually that's just the start. So I'm just going to check, because YouTube's still not showing me any comments. I just want to see if anybody's actually replying. Well, I give you all a moment to think about that. Okay, let's see if that gives me some comments. Yes, I'm getting comments. Excellent. I've got it. I've got it. There seems to be 2 views. So, oh yeah, so Judy Ann said yes, she's watched my reel. Thank you. And Charles says force them to risk. I'm not sure which, because I've only just seen the comment, I'm not sure what that relates to. Force them to risk. You might have to add a bit more there, Charles. So excellent. That's got that sorted. So what I wanted to go in a bit more, yeah, so Jenny sort of says, like, one of the things I say is that pain pushes until vision pulls. I find people who tell me that anger gets them to move forward in life, and anger seems like the wrong energy to push forward with, but often it's our pain that's pushing us. If we don't have the pain, then we're not willing to make the changes. And it's always that balance of what is the pain I'm experiencing versus what is the fear of the change I need to make. And whichever's bigger, then we will stay there. If the pain is less than the fear of the change, then we will stay in the pain. And it'll take some time before that pain rises up high enough that we finally will get up and make the changes that we need. Oh, so you mean to get them to start taking the journey is to force them to risk. So one of the things I spoke about last week is this phase that we're in now is one of resting. But also what's coming up is this resting from our personality. And what's come up since then even more, when I've tuned into a bit more, is that it feels like you have to ask the question right now, what is the purpose of the personality? What part of our evolution did we decide that we needed this personality part of the human makeup? And is that role still valuable right now? And like with the karmic loop, that kind of technology of karma and helping us learn our lessons, that's all changed. And I feel like this month, the personality is changing. And I think that's why we've been asked to put it to sleep a little bit. And of course, what spirituality is all about is to coming back to source, balancing the perfect soul wisdom with our personality working together to help us achieve our goals, and less of the fear-mongering part of our personality or our inner critic. So if this month is going to be about us allowing us then to decide we don't need our personality to be our bodyguard anymore, we need it to be the rational thinking part of us that helps make things happen, then what part of evolution do you think that came up that we needed that? We talk about arms and legs and walking upright and the brain size, but at what point did we need this personality? Because I think Charles asked the question last week, I think it was last week he asked, was if an animal got hurt, or if an animal thinks about ascension, they don't. They just think about whatever they're doing, they're very in the now. If they get hurt, they're aware there's pain, but they don't think, oh, how unlucky am I? What does this mean to my life? And yet as humans, that's exactly what we gained. We did pick that up. And Judy's saying, yeah, discipline is, nobody's going to be a quantum human without it. We need discipline, and discipline is painful. Yeah. And I think I posted a post that said, you got the choice of discipline, which is ounces in weight, versus regret, which is a lot more weight. And both are painful, but one actually ends up with more results and a lighter way of being afterwards. So if we know then that personality is part of the thing that stops us doing things, it's our bodyguard, could the personality be the reason why we spiritually bypass, why we are not so willing to be like a child diving in and exploring our shadows or changing our lives or changing who we are? And if this month is a time where personality can be let go of, then isn't that kind of exciting? And or is it exciting or scary? I don't know. You tell me, which do you think it is? Is it exciting or scary? How would you feel if you realized your personality, that bodyguard that's been making you play small, is suddenly no longer playing a part in your life, that you're free to do whatever you want? Yeah, so Marta's saying discipline is easier to maintain when the vision of where you're going gets clearer. Excellent. So Jenny's up for putting the personality to sleep and saying, work with me rather than against me. Charles is also saying, yes, cool. So like anything, we like a lot of people think that 5D is just going to land on their lap and suddenly they are in 5D. And I've heard people talking about, oh, I woke up this morning and I felt this 5D energy, I must be in 5D. But 5D higher consciousness energy it can't fit in a body whose personality is too scared to let it in, and whose beliefs and limitations have kept the body playing so small that it just cannot contain that energy that's coming in. So yes, if we do the work, we can open up to receive new energies, but it's not like it's an instant match. And that's why it's important to do the spiritual work and why spiritual bypassing causes so much problems. So yes, Jenny says exciting, but also a little scary. So I think it's an opportunity, and any opportunity is going to be a bit scary, which I think is fabulous. So if we can now accept that our personality doesn't have to be the inner critic or the guard that's stopping us move forward, what is the alternative? Well, that's our soul wisdom. And if you remember, that's where we started this conversation on being more obedient to your soul, listening to the whispers, allowing yourself to contemplate the meaning of the whispers, and then translate them with the help of your personality to turn them into action that makes sense, that you can then take. So I feel that sometimes we like to take these breaks to go off and be spiritual, where it's kind of like an escapism thing, because what we're really doing is sitting in a bubble that somebody else has created for us. And we're taking like a little holiday from our lives, from our vibration, from ourselves, so we can sit in this bubble and enjoy that frequency. But we're not integrating it. Like I said with the ascension, we're not doing the changes. So when we leave that bubble, we go back to what we always were. The bubble stays where it is, we go back to life, and then not long after, we start going back to feeling the same way, losing our high frequencies, or even starting to feel like we're stuck again. And I see these as us kind of looking for taking like coffee breaks, as opposed to getting all in and actually committing to the change and committing to our life being a changeable adventure that we need to comply to. So in a way, things like retreats and even like energy healing, when you don't learn to do the homework afterwards. And I was lucky, I had an amazing teacher that always made me do homework. And what that means is I started to take responsibility for my energy, and not something like I'd feel horrible today, so I must go off to my healer to have a healing session so I feel better. I was also then learning and applying it so that I could maintain it and not slipping back to my old ways and undoing all the good that she'd done. So how do you guys manage your vibration now? If you were going to try and raise your vibration, what do you do right now? The Marta saying daily life is the best retreat, where you can practice every day. Yeah, I always joke and say on the top of a mountain, we can probably handle all of our woes much easier, but as soon as we come back into life, then we lose it all. We lose all of those wonderful bits of advice that we were given on how to handle it. Just checking the YouTube's working, yeah. So then we could ask the question then, so what is spiritual bypassing? So if we know that we go to a retreat to get the high, and people think that is being spiritual, and they come home and then it's forgotten, and they just see that as part of the spiritual kind of path. We know that the personality is a bit fearful, and that can hold them back from it. So that could be spiritual bypassing. We know that people don't like discipline because they're too busy or because it's too much hard work. Is that spiritual bypassing? So you can see how I'm trying to break down what we classed as spiritual bypassing last week into something a bit more tangible that we can do something with. So Judy's saying a 24-hour fast is a good way to get yourself back on track. So based on that, and we know that kind of, I think a lot of people are using spiritual posts and books as a way to escape life. And I know that people who become healers to a certain degree, some of the newer healers, not the older ones of the previous generations that really worked hard to master their craft. But now you can get a crystal Reiki and I think what else I've seen, Akashic record type online courses to learn, and then you can become a healer. But even that, you know, is a kind of escapism. It's no different to alcohol, to Netflix, to social media, scrolling. All of these things are escapisms to get away from our lives, assuming that once we're there, like the plaster, we will be fixed for the moment, and then we can come back to our lives. And it's just a temporary booster until we've got the energy ourselves. So I know from people I've spoken to that are healers, then often I find that they'll say, oh, I've just sensed this amazing new energy I'm going to be channeling. And that's great, but then they never do anything with it. Instead, they just keep that dream of that energy going and enjoying that escapism into that bubble. but then they don't have the motivation or the conviction of their beliefs to turn it into a product that they can then offer people. So there's still an element, even if you become a spiritual healer, where you are still escaping from, and I guess spiritually bypassing, even if you are doing some of the work there. Now, the interesting thing is that personally, I don't know why anybody wants to become a healer based on how tough it is, because of our spiritual hygiene, holding space for darker energies. You know, there's a whole other side that is not the fluffy side, that takes a humongous presence and ability to hold that space for other people that I'm sure those courses online didn't teach. So people who might have been feeling a little bit down, who had a little bit of crystal therapy and felt amazing and said, oh, I'm going to go off now and be a crystal therapist, might actually end up getting sicker and worse because their bodies might not be ready to receive the energies they're opening up. They might not understand the spiritual hygiene to keep themselves protected and safe energetically. So they end up then in a worse situation than if they didn't become a healer and they just learned maybe to use some of these tools in a different way, which is where I'm kind of going with the quantum human. So how does that sound to people? Have you kind of met healers like that? Yeah, I'm getting some yeses on. I was just reading, they were having a little conversation with themselves, and I was about to read it out and thought, oh no, that's private between them. But yeah, I'm sure we all know people who have gone into spirituality with, I don't know, a slightly different intention. I chose, well, I didn't choose to do this, it kind of chose me. But, you know, I'm with this responsibility of the information that I can access and the energy I read, I'm very, very aware that I have to have backup plans and people around me who can help me if I do get into any energetic difficulty. So if we know then all the different ways we can spiritually bypass, then how can we start changing that into being a more productive way of managing our spirituality? So I know some people think, I understand it, I've read it, therefore I am it, which is the intellectual, which we know the brain can intellectualize lots of things. We can visualize being in Antarctica, even though we've never been there, but we can't imagine what that's going to be like until we actually go there and physically experience it. And it's the same with spirituality to a certain degree. There's no amount of books or listening to talks that's really going to teach you how to feel it. It's an experience. And those sort of things have to be done in either like one-to-one sessions or group work, or actually taking time out to embody what you've been learning. And embodiment is such a hard concept in itself, you know, learning to embody it. What I feel when I say I embody it is not how somebody else is going to feel it. So me describing it is not going to help somebody else necessarily. There are ways around it, but just understanding that everybody has a unique experience based on where they are, on how they absorb the energies and how it shifts their consciousness and helps them become more in tune with their soul. So could spiritual bypassing be fixed by something like having a more structured approach? You know, if you knew that you took step through 1 to 10 and you could follow those steps, is that going to help make people more aware of all the steps, and therefore they can take those steps and start following a tick list? Because, you know, one of the things now, we've got so many courses online, it's not about information. We have access to a huge amount of information. The problem is getting the shortest, most effective bit of information that will get us from A to B in the quickest way. And I think that's the structured approach, and taking it so that you can kind of have that, what works, do this, do this, do this, and then using that as partly a way to entice those who have accidentally spiritually bypassed to actually start looking deeper at themselves. And for me, that biggest ball is self-discovery, self-awareness. How do you break yourself down? How do you understand yourself? Those sort of questions can be quite daunting for somebody who's never had to do that before. And part of that journey has to be how we navigate and deal with our shadows. Like, how do we take that journey down into our shadows? How do we translate what we see? How do we transmute it? How do we release it if we need to release it, or reprogram it? How do we then build it back up into something new? What does that feel like? How do we know when it's successful? All of these, which are really just personal development type questions. If you're in a job, they would be, you know, how are you doing at your job? Are you reaching all your objectives? Are you growing? Are you learning? So it's just taking that kind of approach to spirituality. Do you think that might help modern day people have more accessibility to spirituality? So Judy's saying, have cleaned up the mess made by the sort of healers I'm talking about. Yeah, no, Judy's an amazing healer. So I know she's my go-to when I'm stuck. She's my rescue one. So yeah, definitely that's the kind of work. It's interesting because there's a generation of healers who were brought up with that reverence for that kind of issue that's not there anymore. So there's this gap now in between where there's going to be more people suffering from that kind of issue and having these kind of entity attachments, not realizing it, and walk-ins and all sorts of stuff. And they're not going to even know why, because of the way they learned. So Charles is saying, once you go back, there's no going back, and people recoil at that. Do you think that? Do you think that people don't, I fear like they're closing the door behind them, like Judy said, they're frightened that when that door's closed, they can't go back? I actually find when people have stepped forward a bit and they've realized that the ground's a bit solid, they're actually not too worried about what's behind them. They're more worried about what's in front of them. Like Judy said, it's actually an amazing experience rather than a fearful one, but it's getting them through the door in the first place is the hard bit. Getting them to open the door and step through, that's the hard bit. But once they're through and they realize actually it's not that bad, they're more willing to carry on. Red Herring Media saying being persecuted on a daily basis, yeah, helps with spirituality. Exactly. But I think some of those, like a lot of persecution obviously comes back from the witch wound, even from the fall of Atlantis. Some of those wounds go back so far, and we've got that in our DNA. So that makes us a little uncomfortable, which is why, again, I wanted to use the word quantum human to get away from, or you're woo, or you're spiritual, you know, to try and give it a different interpretation so we can start building a different approach to it that is more accessible to more people, I guess. Yeah, and so I'm just looking on Zoom. So lots of spiritual bypassing and naivety of energy infiltration. Yeah, I guess deeper hurts for most people. So you're kind of getting what I'm saying here, yeah? That there's lots of reasons why people bypass, and maybe if we give them a structure, maybe it will make it more of a personal development type process. Because, you know, like Red Herring Media said, you know, that the persecution on a daily basis, a lot of techniques that I'm seeing in businesses now are based off of spiritual techniques, but give it a different name and everybody's happy, like visualization. They're all happy to do it now as part of business, even though it was this kind of meditation even was debatable as being a useful practice. Even doctors now are saying, meditate and help reset your nervous system. So things are like, it's like a candy stone, and they're just picking and choosing which bits they are willing to accept now and to take forward as part of what they're calling wellness. But some bits are still behind the scenes and not quite being explained. And again, maybe the structure will help that. Maybe the more we share what we do. And I was kind of like said, well, if I want to do the work I want to do, maybe I've got to change the words I use too. And at first I thought, yeah, okay, I can see why that's the best approach. But equally at the same time, I felt, but then nobody will ever know that these are all spiritual concepts that we're using, and it's going to be hidden under the covers and not achieve what I want to achieve. So again, which is why I'm trying to do the Quantum Human in these talks every week, is I'm trying to raise awareness that these techniques don't have to be woo, they don't have to be strange. We all use our different language for it, but the core of what we do is changing energy and changing beliefs and making people's lives better. You know, we've seen it when we heal someone and whatever was their issue suddenly doesn't bother them anymore. So we know there's power behind it, but it's part of our role to educate other people in a way that they can understand that this exists and that people can use this to boost their lives and get a better life for themselves. Yeah, no, definitely people don't want to let go of personality. But like I said, we might have to this month because something's shifting on that. So they might suddenly find their personalities are automatically being turned off. So like I said, I don't think we need more spiritual training to fix this problem. I don't think we need more books necessarily, unless the book is a different interpretation so people can access the information more easily. But also, how do we encourage people to take the action and reward them for what they're doing? Like, how do they know they succeeded? And I think we'll know when we see the world where that kind of unity consciousness, where we see each other as brothers and sisters, all of the same, that we are all one, and that we can help each other. We don't have to be threatened. We don't have to be copying or stealing from somebody else because we are in victim or scarcity consciousness ourselves. And that's the game, isn't it? That's what we want to get to, that harmony of people all on the planet working together. I'm just trying to read a message here. So, but it's my burden to bear, so it's nothing to worry about. It's just I don't get peace to do what I do creatively. The persecution, you think? I think it's changing. I really do think it's changing. So try changing your story on that and see if you get a different result. Because the persecution has been something that's coming up for the last few months, that we're being spiritually liberated, because it's kind of like all the constraints that we had were due to our physical evolution. And now that we are evolving, some of those constraints, we don't need them anymore. We're able to use our energies more freely. So I'm playing on that kind of role of assuming that things have changed, and then see if I cancel out what I thought, where would I be now? What can I do instead? So I feel one of the things we need for that personality to be quiet is we need to feel safe and supported. So we need that unity consciousness. We need to know that if we were to speak out, that people will listen and be respectful of each other's points of view, that we can all have differing views and still be all heading in the same direction, because that's the whole point. We're all different. We're all unique. We're meant to see things differently. And if we can get to that safety and feeling that it's okay to be ourselves, that we don't have to dim our light, that we don't have to downsize because somebody might get jealous if we're too shiny. Once we can get to that, then maybe, again, spiritual bypassing might be a thing of the past. But of course, we still always have to take responsibility for our lives, and we can ask for help and ask for guidance from people who have done it already. I think that's fabulous. But we also have to take the responsibility for continuing and fixing ourselves and learning how to keep that momentum going. So it's not always just go in, have somebody else do it for you, and then go back on your next problem. We can all learn these skills, which makes us the quantum human, to shift our own energies. And it's also understanding that when we go to an expert, it's not because we're a victim, because we think we can't do it ourselves. We're going to an expert so we can learn more quickly, so we can become what we're supposed to be more quickly, and taking the shortcut, just like you take a guide if you go trekking through the Amazon forest. You don't want to go and wander around for days. You want somebody to get you where you're going quickly, teach you the ropes, give you enough so you can go on and expand the adventure. So based on that, if we could implement some of those things, could we start moving that spiritual bypassing energy that's been coming through and shift it completely so people can actually start moving forward? And I kind of feel like if we offer them those kind of tools, they'll be quite happy to step through and stop spiritually bypassing. Because I do feel a lot of this spiritual bypassing is just bad education, where people don't understand that's what they're doing. And that's partly, teachers teaching it in different ways and everybody having to have their own experience to learn. But we could create a model that would help people make changes in their lives without having to become a healer, with using these skill sets without having to feel like they're using woo, but to make it all a natural part of everyday existence. And that's what I'm hoping to do in the work I'm doing in my Quantum Human portal. So it's still experimental for me, because when I give people who have never done any healing before, when I give them some jobs, then they give me questions, and then I work out new content and experiences and exercises that they can do so they can actually feel it, not just hear me talk about it. I know that when we speak to each other, we learn more than if we were just given the answer. It's that give you the answer, then you just eat for a day. Whereas I teach you how to work out the answers for yourself, then you become more resilient and you're able to make mistakes, but also learn from them and grow as you go. So I think that's an important part as well. What we got going on here? So Red Herring saying, if it's not in my head, oh, delete it. Okay. So they think I'm Jewish. Okay. You've taken 3 messages off. Okay. I'll catch up with you maybe later, yes, with Red Herring Media, what you're writing. Cool. So what we're trying to achieve right now is, how can we, as the people listening to this video, start helping others move forward into using spirituality and tools in a way that can finally make an impact and change their lives. And to do that, we have to talk about what works for us and what doesn't, and talk to other people and share experiences so that we can all start making it normal to talk about such things. So Charles is saying the personality only sees investment versus reward. And what is the reward for the personality to take the back seat? The personality is only there because it's fearful. So the reward is the freedom. The stress is gone. It's a graceful experience. It's exciting, like playful. So the personality does like that stuff. It's become so ingrained in its bad habits and criticism that it doesn't know how to be free anymore. So it doesn't like it goes completely away. They work together in an equal, balanced way rather than being the negative chatter all the time. So the personality actually doesn't mind that when it's consulted in that way. So the interesting thing for me when I'm working with my clients is that each session starts with them telling me what they've achieved themselves. Like, oh, by the way, this issue came up in my life and I did this technique that we did 6 weeks ago, and I applied that and it worked, and it didn't bother me, and I came out feeling so much better. I felt empowered. I felt light about it. Whereas in the past, that would have dragged me down and made me depressed and would have knocked me off center. So all of our sessions start with that. So that shows me that people are learning. So I know that it's possible that people can learn new habits on managing their spirituality and their self-discovery and self-awareness and mindset reprogramming. And then they ask me, well, how do I deal with a different type of problem? And that's the growth. We then, we're always changing and growing. And then I look at their current problem, and we come up with a tailored technique that'll help them sort that one out. And then they go and play with it, and off they go to play. So when we're doing the healings, it isn't just fixing, it's also a training, and they get to experience because they can feel it. And they're learning signatures of what it feels to be joyful, what it feels to be fearful, what it means when it's the right choice, what it means when it's the wrong choice. And they're quite happy, really, really happy to delve into their shadows and have a good old dig around. And they're actually excited to tell me what they find. So I know that normalizing this conversation can make a huge difference, but we just have to be able to share it with others, which is what I was hoping to do today, to show that there is a way to do this work in a joyful, light way without it being scary or fearful or inner critic type conversations kicking off. So I hope that kind of is a solution, or at least we can start thinking of that as the start of a solution for spiritual bypassing. And like I said, with working with clients, I'm really seeing this technique works, not because they go off to be a healer, but they really are navigating their lives using this tool set, using the techniques that I've offered them. So how do you guys feel about that? Because I know I've got two people on Zoom that use this all the time. Have you guys got anything to share about how these techniques have helped you? Actually, we've got 3. So if you guys on Zoom want to let me know how these techniques have helped you, because I know like one lady told me that she'd been struggling to fill out a form for an application, and after one of our meditations, what she'd struggled all day with, after the meditation where we connected her back up, centered her body, brought her back into alignment, she wrote it in half an hour and it was done. Jenny saying she doesn't know how she'd survive without the tools, and they are life-changing. But think of it in terms of like whether you think that's spirituality, or do they seem quite normal as a concept? I know some of the stuff we do isn't so normal, but on average, do you see it as like just regular personal development, healthcare type things that we do? Right, so let's come back here. So Red Herring said, I thought I would let you know what was going on with me a little bit. I don't want to focus too much on it, label-wise. Alchemist, yeah, and a smart to feel. Yeah, whatever's going on for you, just know that the ascension energies are also changing. And as an alchemist, you've got new ingredients to play with. So definitely play with that. Is the personality afraid of the soul? No, I don't think so. I think the personality is only afraid of you getting hurt or failing or being rejected by society. That's what the personality is afraid of. Yeah. So, and then Red Herring Media says a rigidly programmed personality is afraid of the soul. Yeah, but only because the soul wants you to be expansive. So there's no real need for that. The personality is just the protector. So, you know, it's just going to protect you. But if you can convince it why it doesn't need that protection anymore, it's like an overprotective mother when the child grows up is still overprotective. And we want to retrain it so they can step away and say, no, it's time for the child now to go run, make mistakes, learn, and to normalize that as an experience. And once that becomes normalized, then the personality is not really scared of the soul as such. It's only afraid of the changes that the soul will encourage it to make. And yeah, it's definitely like an adventure. You know, from all of our challenges we've ever had, it's all about us learning to see each challenge as us learning new skill sets so we can move forward. It's about us sensing into, like, today I might be a doctor, but hey, my skill set is my skill set. The day after I could be a window washer and I'm still bringing the same frequency and the same skills. The day after I could become a holiday rep. It doesn't matter. Wherever I go, I take this skill set with me. And I know that as I'm called to do these different roles, then I'm also learning more about me and my multidimensional soul and all the aspects of it. And that these are the experiences I need to learn more. So if the personality is always blocking that, then you're not growing. You can't expand and experience life as a full, in its fullness, I guess. Yeah, so on Zoom, they're saying that because they use the techniques every day, that they're now becoming normal for them. So again, that's like part of, like, they don't just read a book and then kind of conceptualize it. They're actually practicing with these tools and using them every day. So that's good to know they do become normal. Making a recipe with unknown ingredients, always wonderful journey, even when it's a bit painful. Yeah. So I think if we can make spiritual growth and adventure, and again, you know, it's just a reframing of it, then I think that spiritual bypassing might reduce. But that's me wishful thinking maybe, but that's what my plan is to try and share with more people that there are ways to, because I'm a computer programmer, so I analyze and break things down and create courses that are structured. That's what I've always done. I did it in data migration, I did it with data analysis, and now I'm doing it with spirituality. So, you know, it shows these skills cross over. I can analyze people's data and their soul information and break it down and give them quite a structured approach to life. So, you know, if I can do that, then others are obviously benefiting from it. Then hopefully that's a way to approach spiritual bypassing. But that's just one suggestion for today anyway. So if you guys have any other suggestions on how you think we can face spiritual bypassing and perhaps come up with a solution for that, because we are the quantum humans who are here to become alchemists and to change things and to bring in new paradigms and look at things from a different perspective, then this is the session to do it, you know, because what we speak here, the energy we hold here, as a group, we're transmuting those energies and shifting the view already. We're sending out shockwaves through the planet from what we've discussed here today. As I read out your messages, as we all focus our brain power into the visualization of this, we're already shifting a lot of things. And I think that's amazing. And I know that even though this seems like a chat, we're doing much, much more than that. And we are causing ripples across the world. So, yeah, thank you for joining me all. And I hope that's given you, again, because all I'm trying to do is kind of open your consciousness to new possibilities, to try something different, to be bolder, to think about things differently. So let's just assume that this personality in its bouncer role is switching off this month. And it's just going to switch off just by intention. You don't have to do anything about it. Just intend that it's switching off, ask for it to be slightly more silent, and then hold your hands out and see what lands in them from the soul instead. And then have little, I usually have little meetings, little meetings with my soul and my personality and some of my spirit guides. We all get together and we say, oh, look, and we lay out the pieces like a jigsaw puzzle. And then we play to see how we can put it all together. And if I can't fix it that day, I leave it on the table and come back to it later. Sometimes I get big ha-ha moments and I'm excited to learn something new and I can feel it ripple through my body. So that's the kind of approach we want to play this month, is like, what if we didn't allow our personality to rule this month? What would we do? Excellent. Well, thank you guys for joining me. I'm going to say goodbye. Oh, I went over again. Sorry. This topic is obviously a big topic. So I hope you're all good, and I'll see you next Monday at 8 p.m. And do carry on putting comments in if you're listening to this afterwards, because there's no right or wrong answer here. I was just putting some answers out there to give you, because some people work best when they're given a piece of an answer and then they can come up with a better one. So I'm just giving you some pieces that I've been working on to see if that then inspires you to come up with either a different approach for yourself or a way to talk about it with others. So thank you guys, and I'll see you all next Monday. Bye.